So this person, I put the title here of can I learn two languages at the same time, but their real question is more about parallel language learning.
Okay.
Because they understand that it's always going to be preferable to focus on one language more effectively. But this person is in a place where they don't want to set aside either Spanish or Persian and have been wondering about ways to learn synergistically, to sort of combine things. Do you see downsides in consuming content in stage 2 in Spanish, and then also doing the same content in Persian for this, like, because they're stage 1 there? Will their incomplete comprehension on the first pass of Spanish, since they're not like stage 4 yet, create bad habits or any problems with Persian? Like, or should they kind of just focus on the two separately?
So I've never tried to learn two languages simultaneously, so I can't speak from experience on this. I can only speak from the people that I've talked to, as well as my own thoughts on sort of how humans learn. I think it'll always be better if you focus on one language. That's not just true with languages, that's true of basically anything. If you divide your time, then you're not going to go as deep with the skill as you otherwise would if you were spending 100% of your time. What that means is if you spend 100% of your time doing something, and then for half the time, and then 100% of your time doing something else for half the time, that full engagement with the... Sorry, what was that?
I did not parse what you just said.
Okay.
100% of the time you're doing...
Sorry, let's say you have a year,
okay,
and you want to learn two skills. If you spend 6 months on one skill and then 6 months on the other skill, you will get farther than if you spend a year doing both.
Yeah, and then great, that makes sense.
Okay.
What if they don't really care? What if they just want to keep you
sure, totally,
and they kind of want to synergize them?
I was just trying to emphasize that in all skills, if you focus is the multiplier. 2 times the effort gives you more than 2 times the results. Mm-hmm. As long as you are focusing on whatever else. But if that's something you're not interested in doing, there's a couple different ways to tackle the problem. One, you can do them simultaneously, and lots of people do that. Some people are much better at separating them in their head, separating the languages in their head than others. For me, like, I mix things up all the time. I don't feel like I could actually do 2 languages simultaneously. Other people don't have a problem with that. So you'll have to figure out what the balance is for you, if that works at all. If you find, though, that you can't separate them and that you're mixing Persian and with Spanish, right?
Yes, Persian and Spanish, they're about stage. Persian, they're stage 1.
Yeah, if you find that you're sort of like mixing them together and you're getting confused by the fact that these 2 languages are getting mixed together into I keep thinking in Spanish, mezcla, a mixture of the 2 languages in your head, then that's a problem, because you do need to have that separation and that ability to turn one on and turn one off.
Is it irony that you're mixing words in your...
It's so ironic.
Mixing languages, yeah.
100%. And it's a very normal thing. Most people experience that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very normal to, in the language learning process, to end up mixing the languages together because we're humans. Some people are just better at separating them than others. So the other approach is, if you're not going to do them simultaneously because you just can't keep them straight, is to alternate. So, if you had a year, 6 months and 6 months, if you wanted to do shorter periods of time, you could do that too. Like a month focused on Spanish, a month focused on Persian. And the idea with that is you will go deeper with the language than you otherwise would. More of it will solidify so that when you step away from it, you won't forget as much. And what you retain will actually be much stronger. Mm-hmm. So if I were in your shoes and I really wanted to learn 2 languages simultaneously, I would probably alternate between them. So focusing on one and then switching and focusing on the other in some period of time. And I would set those time frames deliberately rather than having it be open-ended. Because when you have that time frame, when you have that deadline, you end up doing more of that thing. And it also gives you permission to say no. So if you say, at the end of this month, I'm going back to Persian, then anytime you get that motivation, that desire to go back to Persian, you can say, I am going to do that. I'm just going to do it in 3 weeks or 2 weeks or 1 week or 1 day. And that permission to say no to your own desires, your own motivations, will help you to focus in on the thing that you're actually focused on,
Yeah.
as opposed to an open-ended, like, oh, I'm going to do it whenever I feel like it. You're constantly going to be have this conflict between the motivations between the two different languages.
Yeah, you've been threatening to start Hebrew for a little while, and so you basically not do much Spanish for, let's say, a whole month at a time while trying to get the basics and things like that, and then at some point maybe come back to it.
Yeah, I prefer longer periods of time. I think because running a company is stressful and like takes up my time and energy. I can't say like, oh, this month I'm actually going to have all of the time and energy for this thing. So for me, it's much better to do a year at a time. And I've done that for a lot of different skills. So like I did guitar for a year because I knew that I would get farther than if I just said I'm going to do it for a couple months. And I'm planning to do the same thing with Hebrew. So this year is all about Spanish output. And then next year I'm planning to do the basics of Hebrew and basically trying to get to that point where I can understand it in a year.